Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all having a great day. Today we are going to be talking about the biggest AAA games that you can play on Steam Deck and that run surprisingly well on the Steam Deck. This includes games that have giant open worlds, games that have incredibly beautiful graphics, or games that are just extremely complex and feels like they'd be too big for the Steam Deck, but that actually manages to play it well. Let's go ahead and kick this off with my personal favorite game of all time after having played it, and that of course is Cyberpunk 2077. Now obviously we all know Cyberpunk launched in an incredibly buggy state. It was not ideal to play, much less imagine playing it in a handheld, but since its launch with all the patches and all the fixes, it runs incredibly smooth on the Steam Deck. In fact, CD Projekt Red even went out of their way to include a Steam Deck graphics mode so that it would be more tailored to the Steam Deck's hardware. When they originally did this, it did feel like there was a little bit of tuning that needed to be done, and it didn't quite feel like it was the right mode to put it in, or as if they needed more time to test the hardware. But since then, it has been incredibly smooth on the Steam Deck. In fact, you can even play the game at a pretty consistent 30 frames a second without any issues, and that's on medium. Really impressive stuff that you can get a game as densely packed and as big as Cyberpunk 2077. Really cool stuff. Plus, just being able to run it at 30 at least, that's honestly more than I could expect. Moving on to our next game, and of course this is the brand new Hogwarts Legacy. This game runs surprisingly really well on Steam Deck. Now I will say immediately my first impressions were not very positive. I felt like the game looked just a tad too shaggy and it just didn't look like the models looked quite right. However, after they released the day one patch, it turned out that it actually fixed a lot of the issues I had with the way it ran on the Steam Deck. Now not only does it look actually pretty decent and it runs at a very smooth 30 frames a second when you're in the castle or exploring the forest, but it even does a really great job at keeping up with all the crazy stuff that happens when you're in combat. I will say, even docking it to the TV, I was kind of surprised at how well it looked considering that I'm only running it at low. All in all, if you're wanting to play Hogwarts Legacy on the go, I say this is a great time. Battery life wise, I was actually able to get about close to 2.5 hours, depending on what settings you do. If you use like Sharp FSR, and then you do a little bit of fine tuning on some of the Steam Deck settings. But all in all, I actually think it's a really solid experience. And if you don't want to tinker too much, I really don't think you need to a whole lot. This next game, I just want to give a brief disclaimer that I have not actually tried this on my Steam Deck, but I have seen a lot of videos of people getting this game to run on Steam Deck, and I'm honestly really surprised that they even managed to do that. And that of course is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, last year's version. Obviously the 2009 version would run just fine, but it does turn out that apparently you can play Modern Warfare 2 on the Steam Deck. Now this took me by surprise because honestly the Call of Duty games have been really graphically demanding in the last few years, especially when it comes to the amount of storage that both needs to be used up on your PC, console, wherever you're playing it, but also just the VRAM and the graphical details in general. Now I know games like Warzone and things like that are coming to mobile, but it's still really a graphically intense game. So I was really curious to see if the Steam Deck would actually be able to hold up, and from what I've checked with a lot of the videos, it does appear that it is playable. I don't know specifically what frame rates they're hitting or what type of quality settings they're using, but the fact that you can get a game as graphically impressive as Modern Warfare 2 running on the Steam Deck is really impressive to me. This next game probably doesn't come as much of a surprise because it's been out for a while, but that of course is going to be Marvel's Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a super fun game. I have platinumed the game once on PS4, and I'm honestly getting pretty close to doing it again on Steam, but the game is just so much fun, and the fact that you can swing around this huge version of New York as Spider-Man on such a small screen and console, it's just so cool. Not to mention that the Steam Deck's portable nature, the pick up and go style of gameplay that it lends itself well to, is really perfect for something like Spider-Man, where you have all these side quests, you have all these different objectives, all these things that you're collecting, and it really is fun to just kind of pick up, grab a few collectibles, and then kind of hit the road. So it's really a perfect type of game for something like the Steam Deck. I'm also really impressed at how well it actually runs on the Steam Deck. If I'm not mistaken, I believe I was able to get about 40 frames a second, pretty steady, not necessarily locked, but pretty steady, at least going through the city at 40 frames a second, both in combat. You know, it'll dip just a tad bit, but I want to say I got about 2 hours of battery life last time I checked it. So it's honestly really surprising and impressive that it can handle so much going on at one time, especially when you get the different gadgets out and things like that. You're juggling different characters, or enemies rather, in the air. It's all really fun stuff, and I think it's perfect for the Steam Deck. Keeping with Sony's exclusive games, we gotta talk about God of War 2018. This game was a huge success when it came out. It really shook up the God of War formula, and it changed it into something that's almost more Metroidvania as opposed to Devil May Cry. But this was such a breath of fresh air, especially after years of Kratos and God of War being a one-note style game. This added a much needed shakeup as well. So honestly, it was really, really cool that you're able to play a game as big or as graphically impressive as God of War on something like the Steam Deck. I think it's also kind of cool to have a very deep story game on something as small as the Steam Deck. So if you really want to kind of nestle in for the night, if you're at home and you don't really want to be on the TV, but you do want to be able to kind of lounge on the couch or be in your bed and be able to put in some headphones and just really immerse yourself in a world like God of War, I think it's perfect. It's a really, really great game if you're really wanting to have a long gameplay session with your Steam Deck. I think in terms of narrative action games, you could do a lot worse than God of War. Talking about big AAA open world games, one has to bring up Elden Ring. Now, I was going to put a Rockstar game on here, but honestly, we all kind of know that Rockstar games already work on this thing, and I don't really want to bog down the list with just Rockstar games, but Elden Ring is a really important one to bring up once again, because Elden Ring just has such an incredible open world, and it also has one of the biggest open worlds I have seen. And by biggest, I don't necessarily mean in landmass, but at least within the density of the world itself. It is perfect for the Steam Deck because you can either have long play sessions on it, or you can have short play sessions on it. If you just want to pick up, play, maybe fight a few bosses and then put it down, or if you want to just spend the entire night hunting for treasure. There's so much to do in Elden Ring, and honestly, just the fact that something as deep and rich with content is sitting on such a small device, it is just really cool. Plus, the game runs really, really well on Steam Deck. I normally get a very solid 30 frames a second. I think I've seen some people get 40. I normally keep it at 30 just for sake of battery life. I also get decent battery life out of it. I normally get about 2.5 hours. So it's really, really strong in its performance as much as it is in its gameplay. Really high recommendation for this one. And the very last game I want to talk about is Final Fantasy VII Remake. I honestly was so excited when I found out this was coming to Steam. I had been wanting to play this game for so long. I really am a huge Final Fantasy fan, and I really enjoy a lot of the games, but 7 is the remake I kind of always wanted to see. And once it came out to the PlayStation, I did not have a PlayStation, so I did not get to experience it on that. Thankfully, when it came to Steam on the PC, I was finally able to play it on the Steam Deck, and it runs super well. I was really impressed with how well it ran. Now, I will say it's not perfect. It does have a few issues in terms of you do kind of have to buffer the graphics down just a tad bit, and you're not really going to get the most amazing battery life. If I remember right, I think I was just shy of 2 hours. Only reason I bring this up for this game in particular is because this game is a bit more narrow. It's a bit more linear compared to a lot of the other big AAA games I have brought up on this list, especially when you compare it to something like Cyberpunk, where Cyberpunk is an open world, and this, even though it's open, it's not nearly as open as something like Cyberpunk. So I just want to be clear when I nitpick this, it's because I kind of expected it to be able to kind of roll with the hits just a bit more, but still I'm getting a really, really solid frame rate despite any sort of nitpicks I have. I'm really impressed with how well the combat holds up on the Steam Deck, and honestly, if you're wanting to kind of, once again, have a story game or even just do some side quests while you have it up, I think it's really perfect for something like that, to just kind of lay back and level up. Overall, it gets my seal of approval. And that is going to do it for our list of my favorite AAA Steam Deck games. These are just the games that I've tested, or in Call of Duty's case, watched other people test, And I'm just really impressed that games like these are able to run on such a small device. So tell me below in the comments if you have a game that you think I missed, or a game that you think is just incredibly big and impressive and you're shocked that I didn't bring it up. What's a good game to check out on the Steam Deck? I would love to hear your comments and your thoughts below. Once again, everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I really do appreciate it. If you have any future video suggestions, feel free to either join my Discord or follow me on Twitter. I'm pretty active on both. With all that being said, guys, thank you so much for coming to this video. Make sure to take care of yourselves, stay safe, and have a great day.